The thing about expired domains, and the reason they're so interesting, is because they're old. And when you've got a domain that's pre-Penguin and you've got trusted old links going into these domains, the link equity is therefore really powerful. There's a whole load of work I've done around whether links work and how they work and what circumstances they work in and so on and so forth. But the short of it is, if you've got a trusted link, if you've got a trusted website, it'll rank. If you are a trusted website and you're linking out, those links are good. So in other words, you can have trust in a website, you can have trust in a link, and if you know about Penguin, you'll know that Penguin is ultimately about mass disavow and mass distrusting of bad links. These expired domains, or at least the right ones, are pre that whole period. So Google neither trusts nor distrusts the domain. They just think that's a nice domain with nice link equity. And that's why these things work and why they will rank websites. Just going back into this big thing about building trust through transparency, it's a pillar of everything we're doing here with FastRank and just in my business philosophy as a whole. The big thing about confidence from your point of view as a purchaser is that you know when we evaluate a domain, we say this is a good one, it corroborates with your understanding of what a good domain looks like. Assuming, of course, you understand your SEO and you're not kind of some noob who, whatever. But anyway, you got the idea. And this is why we put so much work into getting really strong metrics and really strong validation behind the metrics, which is why everything we talk about, there's a ton of testing and correlation analysis and so on sitting behind that. This is usually what you'll find. And this is what I found. And this really annoyed me because I just personally think if you're buying expired domains or whatever, and you don't know what's going on with the domain, i.e. has it been spammed out yet? Does it have a noticeable footprint? Whatever, then it's just plain risky. And why would I want to do that? Well, I wouldn't. So therefore, I just thought the only way I can do this is doing it myself. And that's why I pulled a team together from the agency and we built this infrastructure that you see today. Now, most of you are going to know about all this, but for those of you who don't, one of the big applications is private blog networks. And one of the reasons they are becoming so popular, I think, is because links are hard to get. In other words, Google's doing a really good job of zeroing out links from sources that are easy to place links in. In other words, if you want a link, these days it's much more about editorial justification and go through that whole editorial process and stuff, and it's just a massive amount of hard work. And what a lot of people are doing is they're resorting to PBNs because it's the closest thing to just automated link building that we've got these days. I mean, there is automated link building, but what I mean is this stuff actually works. The catch is you've got to stay out of the radar. And Julia Logan, Irish Wonder, has written a brilliant blog post all about this. Now, we do build PBNs and we do take care of our housekeeping. And I can say that they are worth doing, but they take a lot of administration. The other route is 301 redirect sites, which in many ways is easier. So all of this, by the way, assumes that these are sites you want to rank and you've got another few of them in the queue and you can just blow that one up and get the next one in and so on. So it's like black hat spam, basically. And the reason black hat spamming is still popular is because it works. And this is a classic example. You get an expired domain with a lot of link equity. You run a couple of scripts through it. So you do one that minimizes the number of 404 errors. You set up a 301 redirect from that site to the thing you want to rank, or maybe to a site that's a satellite site of that thing you want to rank. And it'll pass really good page rank. And most importantly, it'll work because the links that are flowing through this thing haven't been penguinized, or at least the good domains haven't. And our job in FastRank is obviously to filter out all the spam so that you get the good stuff at the end. And of course, in the end, you could just have a real website, which would be a nice thing. And a lot of these websites are very reusable and brandable. One of the really cool things is we have a very powerful algo which uses Alchemy API, and that allows us to find out exactly what a domain is all about. So it's easy for you to do a search and you could find something about like hotels in London or whatever, and you'll find sites that are on topic around that and possibly reusable with good link equity and are trusted by Google, because Google's default position seems to be, if we don't know you, we trust you until you prove you're untrustworthy, and then if you're untrustworthy, that's the end of that. You've got a problem. So these sites are really good for ranking because they're good, solid, trustworthy sites in Google's eyes. And of course, just to reiterate, there's this whole thing around hygiene. And I go back to Julia Logan, Irish Wonder's advice here. She is right. And along with all of this, I think just generally today, hygiene is really important, obviously. It just saves you money because you don't have to redo everything if Google finds you. And in fact, that's about that on that point. Now, let's get into the crawling and how it all works. What we do is we have crawlers that work 24/7, and we per machine we're able to crawl about 164 million pages a day, and that's fine. But as we go along, we know we have more and more servers, so we can crawl hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of millions of pages. But that in itself isn't particularly special. What's important is the process we go to actually find the dead link and make it efficient so that we can just carry on scaling up. We ping, essentially we go through a series of pings, and if a site is dead, then we'll run it through Whois. We have an API there we use, and then if that says no, it's not registered, then we run it through Majestic. If the domain is over TrustFlow 15 on the high end, or maybe TrustFlow 10, depending on circumstances, and it's got at least 10 referring domains, then we're interested. Then it goes into our processing queue. The big thing that sits behind the crawler, of course, is the seed list, and this is where there's some quite clever science going on here. The thing about the internet is that people link to similar websites, and what we do is we have an algorithm that tells us every time we pick up a good domain. So we go crawling around 164 million pages a day, and eventually we find tens of thousands of these broken links, which equals tens of thousands of expired domains. And when we actually find a domain that's good, we know which referring domain gave it to us. Then, and this is the really cool part, then we run these lists through Amazon machine learning, and then what we do is we get these lists of domains, we run them through our crawler infrastructure, and then we go to Amazon machine learning and run this lot through there. And what we're looking for are certain characteristics that the machine learning algorithms can identify. And over time, what we find is it just improves. What it means is we can build seed lists that target particular neighborhoods. Because as we say, people link to similar people, and good sites tend to be found in particular neighborhoods, let's say. And also there's this whole thing about topical relevance, and what we do is on our seed listing, we know what subject areas we're interested in, and we do mass scrapes of Google to find domains that way, and then that helps us A, identify the right profile, and B, the right subject nature of the domains, and then off we go and we do our thing. We also use a lot of Majestic to harvest. But the crawler, the seed list, is an important part of the story. And this is a typical expired domain. It was once a good site that people were interested in, and now it's dead. And we're interested in things like number of referring IPs and referring domains, but we're also very interested in obviously the actual backlinks themselves, and the topical categorization is reasonably important to us. But generally this would be a low-end, healthy website that's old, that probably hasn't been penguinized because it's never been picked up and never spammed. Therefore, it's an interesting site. We then get the top 100 backlinks, and what we do is we look for, we then score the characteristics of the links. So we're looking at, for example, only follow links. We want them to be live. We want them to have good trust flow, citation flow. And ideally, we want them to come from strong referring domains, i.e. the links themselves come from strong referring domains. Now, this is really the heart of the evaluation system. And what we use is trust flow as our core metric, and we then have weightings based on a scoring system we use across all of these variables. And then we end up with a score. And again, our old friend Amazon Machine Learning helps us identify or iterate the scoring system so that we can tune it up over time, because it's been very difficult just getting it right out of the bat. And therefore, when you're dealing with large data sets like this, you've got to use things like just clever algorithms to get these things right. In other words, it's not a done deal. It's always moving and always shifting around so we can get the scoring right. And this is the weighted trust flow. And again, like I say, we have our top 100 backlinks. We only ever get the top 3 links from any domain. And that's really important because it's very easy to get everything very skewed, but we found that 3 links per domain is a good sample. And when you get 100 backlinks per domain, again, it's a good sample size to give you a pretty good idea of how good the domain is without going crazy on spending money on API calls. Because if we went too deep, what we found is we go deeper, we don't really get much more. And it costs us exponentially more in cost. So therefore, it's better that we go thinner and a lot wider. The other big thing is spam and making sure that we pull out anything that is spammy. Now, one of the things, there are two test cycles we go through. One is anchor text. So we get the top 10 anchor texts for any given domain, and we have a long list of spam keywords, and we give each one a score. And then if we see a really bad phrase or whatever, that tips us over our minimum threshold, and then it becomes spam. Later on in the product, when we're developing it more, I think we're going to offer people the choice. If they want a spam domain, they can have it for dirt cheap, but be aware it's spam. The other thing we look for is snapshots in archive.org. And what we do is we scrape those snapshots and we look at the content on the page. So if I go back here, imagine this page here, let's say it's been spammed and it's got Viagra here or Silas or something like that. We find that word, we go, that's a stop word, that's bad, spam. And that's basically how we check. We just want to know, has a domain been, has the domain been completely spammed out or not? And I think going through Wayback or archive.org and anchor text are two pretty robust ways of doing it. Okay, so we've just talked about the algo, the fact we look at top 100 backlinks, the fact that we score all of these backlinks and come up with a thing called weighted trust flow score, and that we check archive.org for spam. and that we also check anchor text for spam. So it's quite comprehensive stuff. Now the next thing is relevance, and this is a big thing for me because I think it's somewhere where we've really scored, as it were. The thing about these domains is there are an awful lot of them, and a domain is great if it's got good PageRank, but it's amazing if it's relevant to you. And one of the things we wanted to get right was making it really intuitive and simple for you to just get a domain that's relevant to you. Amongst other things, of course, it's a safety thing, because it's important that domains are relevant, and that if you get an editorial check or whatever from Google, that you check out right. So there's a whole bunch of reasons why it matters. And the way we determine relevance is on two fronts, really. One is through Majestic, and the other is the other is alchemy.org. Sorry, Alchemy API. But just to explain how we do the relevance model, let's say you're interested in particular topical trust flow categories, so it's sports, football, or something like that. Then what we do is we look at the confidence level for that topic, and then we'll find domains that have the highest confidence level for that topic, and they end up top of the list. Or, for example, if it's just sports, because it's sports and football, we might also look for sports, college, university, so therefore that doesn't have much topical trust flow at all, but you know what, it'll probably come up in the search as well. So the whole thing, it's all about category matching, essentially. Majestic is very good for topical trust flow categorization, but one of my issues is it's not that intuitive. Nevertheless, we just talked about all of this. So this is the domain scoring. As I say, we pick up each category. Each category has a confidence score, and then you look for a particular category, and all these domains match up against that somewhere along the way. And the one with the biggest number is at the top of the list, and the smallest number is the bottom of the list. But there is something much more powerful in a way, and this is alchemy.org, or Alchemy API. And Alchemy API is a tool that is owned by IBM these days. And it's a natural language processing tool. And what's so cool is that you can just type in a key phrase, like, say, football games or something like that, and it'll come up with the correct taxonomy for football games. You could put in a bit of text. So, for example, in this case, I put in that Nebraska site, pasted it in, and it came up with sports, football, sports, baseball, and arts and entertainment. Overwhelmingly, it's saying it's about football. That's great. And as you see from the content, that's why, because they're talking about football and updates and people losing and winning and so on and so forth. The coolest thing about Alchemy is that you can type any phrase you like, and it'll come up with this categorization, which we then apply to all of the domains that we've scraped. So every domain we look at or we have in our database has already been run through Alchemy. We've got the taxonomies, the keywords, the whole thing, and therefore it's a really powerful way of finding relevant domains. And here it is. Let me just demo this for you because it is pretty cool. And I will just, for example, enter my own text, and so I'll go football match, and it should come up with a taxonomy, and there it is. So sports, football. It's just very clever and very powerful, and as I say, we use this all the time within our infrastructure. Now, on let's just go full screen again. Right, okay. So that's relevance. And now the final thing, or we're getting towards the end of this, the other thing is evaluating or doing evaluations. So the way we do it is we have a weighted trust flow score. We add that up. We have 1 credit per 1 weighted trust flow point. And then we have an exchange rate. So for example, it might be 15 cents per weighted 15 cents per credit. Therefore, a domain, if it's got 200 WTF points, it would be $30. And we also have price decay, because the thinking behind that is that if a domain hangs around a long time, then it should just be discounted cheaper, because why are we hanging on to the domain? You know, if you want it at the right price, take it. So it's almost like a Dutch auction where the price starts at a premium for the first few days and then drops and then slowly declines in price. That means you could end up with a domain for $1, which I think is quite cool. And where we're going with this is just more iterations on improving the algorithm, the evaluation algorithm, improving the seed listing and improving the scale of everything. And the other thing is just to keep dropping the prices, because there's that sweet spot where it's fair for you and it's fair for us, and you know, we want to get there. And the way we're doing it is, as I say, by scale, because the more domains we have, the more we can do them cheaply. Now, this whole thing about why do expired domains persist? And I think it's because of the size of the internet and the number of false positives that they're going to get. Apparently, according to a bunch of research I've done, roughly there are nearly 1 billion sites on the internet that have been registered, and of those, quarter of a billion, should I say, are live. These are all renewed daily, so in other words, you're talking about 1.175 million domains renewed, and apparently there's roughly this number, just over 500 million domains registered annually. That's because some people register domains for more than 1 year and so on. Now, what happens is that these domains, they will get expired. So this would be the total annual number of domains. And this is just my calculation, but to give you some perspective, this would be 0.15 of 1%. And you can see here, here's a scale. It's tiny. So in the relative picture of things, 120,000 domains used for PBNs, etc., is a tiny number of domains, relatively. And if you think about, for example, Google zeroing out PageRank for all domains that come up with 404 errors, all domains that have changed registrant, all domains that have dropped but come back, then they're going to break the internet. And what will happen is they'll get too many false positives, and the damage will not be worth the benefit, because I think their attitude is, well, we're beginning to understand how to rank sites even without links, and we know that gradually links are diminishing in importance. And I figure they just think, well, this is just one of those edge cases, and you know, we can't fix it. Obviously, they can get harder on penalties and all this kind of stuff, but ultimately, you start zeroing out PageRank in all these circumstances, you're going to break the internet. And there's exactly the same story applies to 301s. If you're talking about 301 redirect sites and all of that, you turn off 301s and then you see what happens. It would totally break the internet. And that's why I think expired domains carry on carrying on. And the other thing, just to say, recapping on these expired domains, the benefit of these things is that they are pre-Penguin, many of them, like the good ones. And if Google doesn't know about them, they trust them. That's the default position. And I've seen that in loads of circumstances. So I think it's a very good reason to use these things. And there we are. So So it's a very good reason to use expired domains, in my opinion. Of course, the reality is you should always use them in conjunction with other things, because if you just have 100% expired domains, it's going to look really strange. So these things kind of get knitted in with other link sources you're working with. And as long as you pick well, then they'll do you good service. And obviously with FastRank, what we've tried to do is make these domains as easy, these good domains as easy to identify as possible. Thank you very much.